In 2023, the theme park that sits on the border of the Carolinas celebrates 50 years of operation. A place inspired by Disneyland that was the dream of one man to bring more to the people.
Carowinds, it's a magic breeze, let the breeze take you where you please. A magical world of history, laughter, excitement, and fantasy. Carefree winds drift along with ease, let the breeze take you where you please. Where each day's a holiday, every day is Saturday, fun never ends. Carowinds.
Just quickly, if you would like more of the Expedition, check out our new podcast, Expedition Enthused, a theme park podcast, out now on all major podcast platforms. Earl Patterson Hall, known as Pat Hall, was born in 1921 near Matthews, North Carolina. From his earliest days, he worked hard, believing that everything must have a good purpose. After joining the army in World War II, he later went on to make, renovate, and sell texture machinery and facilities. He would make his millions in the Industrial Development Program. He dabbled in politics, was the chairman of the Charlotte Housing Authority Board of Commissioners and the North Carolina Board of Conservation and Development, and became well known in the Carolinas for always wearing a white necktie with the letters YCDBSOYA on them. You can't do business sitting on your ass. There was one project he was more excited about than any. Pat Hall had taken a trip to Disneyland in 1955 and immediately believed that the Carolinas needed a similar recreational complex. Not just for the money, but for the people. And right away he emphasized, not one of the Carolinas needed this, but both. He would dream up a place that would fill the need for wholesome family entertainment and leisure at its finest, spending the next few years visiting any open amusement park around the world he could find to get ideas. In October 1969, Pat Hall disclosed his plans for a $250 million amusement park and leisure living resort development adjacent to Interstate 77. What he himself called a near obsession would finally become a reality. The 900-acre planned site was secured by real estate consultants of Rock Hill. It was unique in the fact that the land would be divided by the North-South Carolina state line. As final designs for the site were being drawn up, the plan was it would begin construction in 4 phases, complete over 10 years, starting in 1970. Phase 1 would include an amusement park, a golf course, and a large marina. Phase 2 would include a resort convention hotel with facilities for 2,000 people, a revolving tower restaurant overlooking a valley, family campsite, and another golf course. More entertainment offerings would also come with this phase, including an amphitheater looking out over a lake for Broadway show, concerts, and more, and there was even talk of an NFL stadium, with the halfway line being on the state line. Phase 3 would see the residential community and luxury waterfront apartments, and the 4th and final stage would include schools and other facilities to support this community. All of this was drawn up with a site design that was created by A.G. O'Dowd and Associates of Charlotte, an architectural firm that was planning many of the city's downtown redevelopment projects. Carowinds planned to use the best designers in the business for each separate entity of the resort. The overall scope of the project was huge, and unlike anything seen before in the area. Researchers estimated that 1 million visitors would come to the new amusement park attraction in its first year, with a planned opening of 1972. The design of the amusement park was especially important to Hall, stressing that it would take full advantage of its historical surroundings and include a monorail to other areas of the resort. Hall himself made the announcement that took many local businessmen by complete surprise, though much of the feedback was extreme excitement for the prospect, with many hoping it would bring a boon to the area like Disneyland had done to Anaheim and Six Flags Over Georgia had done for its area. Many doubted that the project would actually even really happen, but Hall repeatedly stated, "Carowinds, would be built. From the moment that Hall had come up with the idea, he had a name for the project in mind. He would call it Carowinds, a combination of Carolina and winds, in reference to the winds that blow across the two states. When Pat Hall was asked how much profit he expected to make from the project, he said, "I expect to make a return on the investment, naturally, but I am not looking at Carowinds as mine alone. It will belong to everyone in the Carolinas, and I'm sure we will all profit from its culture, education, and just plain fun, as well as financially." Much of the expected success for the 250 acres used for an amusement park was compared to Disneyland's success. Anaheim's economic growth from its opening, and it was expected here it would be even better due to the ease of road transportation in a much larger area for the new park for two states. On May 1st, 1970, the first ground was broke for the huge Carowinds Resort Phase 1, the amusement park. Pat Hall brought in the best teams he could find at the time for the project, people with experience from all different industries to bring it all together. Appointed as the first vice president and general manager of Carowinds would be Gene Patrick, former general manager at the Astroworld amusement park in Houston, and before that had helped open Six Flags Over Georgia. The plan would be, in addition to a galaxy of midway-type rides, the theme park would feature everything of historical interest to the Carolinas, a place that combined recreation and historical heritage. One of the first purchases for the new attraction included a stagecoach in which the late Clark Gable once acted a love scene, a wagon used in the western How the West Was Won, and real movie-used props. Hall had purchased 15 pieces to get started on his theme park from MGM Studios' famous auction, and he was on his way to making his dream a reality. Randall Dool and Associates, famous theme park designers, would come up with the plans for the new park. They would often clash with Hall, as he stated they didn't really know the Carolina people very well. Before construction even began, talk focused on a coming log flume, a wild Disneyland-type trip through a haunted house, a roller coaster with a train going through a mine, and a giant observation tower that could accommodate 70 people. Other additions were discussed, such as an antique carousel and an old-fashioned steamboat. It was all clearly very Disneyland influenced, yet took inspirations from parks around the world. With an estimated construction cost of around $20 million to build, they even planned a monorail that would eventually connect with parking lots and hotels in the area. Not only did the park have rides though, but the plans for the historical and industrial exhibits were underway, and top industrial firms from the area would have exhibition buildings in the park showing off their latest and greatest technology and products. The park were not shy about their Disneyland influences, and general manager Gene Patrick said that just like Walt Disney himself said, Carowinds would never be completed. Pat Hall at a conference reported on how his dream was now becoming a reality. The history of the two Carolinas will be incorporated into a theme park spanning both states that could rival any. He said he wasn't just bragging, he was soon going to prove it. Carowinds would have 7 themed areas: Plantation Square, the Queen's Colony, an Indian, pirate, frontier, and country section, and a contemporary one with a one-price ticket to see them all. The only upcharge attraction would be the planned monorail. Hospitality would become the trademark of Carowinds. The plan would be that you entered the park through a southern mansion, sitting on the state line. You were then transported into a typical main street of the Old South. Nearby sat a Charleston waterfront, showing early colonization of the two Carolinas and the influence of British rule. The history and culture of local Native Americans would be represented. Pirates could be found roaming the Pirate Island, and the contemporary area would be more teenager-orientated, with bigger and more exciting rides. Mascots for the park were made with original characters. These included Ringo the Raccoon and Pamela Pig. Carowinds was finally under construction and set to open, slightly delayed, in the spring of 1973, and they were promising a lot. Pat Hall stated that Carowinds would be one of the nation's finest travel attractions, rivaling any in the world in concept, design, and beauty. As the park sat in 2 states, admission tax would be split between North and South Carolina. However, concessions inside would be taxed under the state in which they were physically located. The excitement for the new project was at an all-time high, with land costs near the park skyrocketing and talk of more expansions on the forefront of everyone's mind. In December 1972, select people got to preview the upcoming Carowinds. The response was that it was the best thing to ever happen to the Carolinas. With the opening date set for March 31st, construction had been completed for a few months by the time it opened, and it was finally time to see if Pat Hall had delivered. With 18 shows, 19 rides, and even more exhibits, guests could finally visit the new theme park. Paying $5.75 each, opening day came, and it rained all day long. The opening was projected to have between 15,000 to 25,000 people attend. Around 6,000 visitors actually arrived to see the brand new park. Under his umbrella, Hall gave a short speech that Carowinds would never be completed. He went on to say that they had built the park in the rain and they would open it in the rain, and went on to welcome their first ever official guest, a young boy who had written to Hall and asked if he could buy the first ticket. He had invited him to come for free. The weather had taken its toll, with downpours all day long. Those who were there trudged through the puddles and got to experience the United States' newest theme park. While attendance was lower, reaction to what was on offer was great. Much of what was said to come to the park was there. Rides, shows, and exhibits for the whole family, with a highlight on the history of the Carolinas. It was full of excited employees, it was extremely clean, and it had a ton of stuff to do and see. The second day, double the amount of opening day guests turned up, with around 12,000 visitors going through the gates. The weather was slightly better, and guests arrived to see the 7 themed areas of the park. The second day wasn't without its problems, however, also including water. A main water line that supplied the park burst and left the park without some areas having running water for most of the day. Surprisingly, nobody really minded. Some of the food had to be cut down. People were just happy that the sun was shining, the brand new park was open, and the rides were running. Mostly. The park would hold a new grand opening, marking the first day of summer, during the first week of June. Both the governor of North and South Carolina would attend, and Pat Hall would officially declare Carowinds open for daily summer operation. While the opening weekend began slowly, each following weekend produced a new attendance record. By the time the summer season started, 200,000 guests had already enjoyed a day at Carowinds. Pat Hall's Carowinds was a huge success. It was on its way to exceed the projected 1 million visitors in its first year. The rides were fun, the park was beautiful, and the live shows were a must. Carowinds was celebrated throughout the Carolinas as the new must-visit place to go. Riding the Powder Keg Run, headed into the Haunted Mine on the mine train, were the standout highlight of the park. By September 1973, Carowinds had passed more than 1 million visitors. By the time the park closed in November, 1.35 million guests had visited, a record for similar style parks. Interest had been extremely high, and those that came praised the park for its style. The growth and success was attributed to the great word-of-mouth reviews in the Carolinas and beyond. As the season drew to a close, all eyes turned to 1974, with officials expecting record attendance, aiming for 1.5 to 2 million visitors during the second season. Trouble, though, was brewing.
Oil-producing countries of the Arab world decided to use their oil as a political weapon. They will reduce oil production by 5% a month until the Israelis withdraw from occupied territory.
Carowinds cited recent studies conducted in Florida had shown that people did not give up their entertainment during the Depression or World War II, and used this as proof that the looming energy crisis would not deter people from visiting. Most visitors during the opening season, in fact 85% of them, lived within a 100-mile radius of the park. To prepare for the second season, a number of improvements at the park were made. Two of the bigger problems during the first year were that there were not enough picnic grounds, and the bus parking lot held less than half the number of buses that were trying to arrive on busy days. To fix this, Carowinds would add space for up to 2,200 picnickers on tables throughout the park, and a new bus parking lot was planned. The monorail would also now be included in the slightly increased park ticket rather than an extra charge. While a crisis was looming throughout the nation, Carowinds were optimistic for the 1974 season. That optimism did not last long. By November 1974, Pat Hall had put Carowinds up for sale, reluctantly. Carowinds Corporation had a loan of $25 million due that had no prospects for long-term refinancing. The energy crisis had taken its toll. The company's mortgage was due to be repaid by December 31st, 1975, and it was looking impossible, along with the loan for the construction of the park. The company had planned to obtain long-term financing later, or sell stock to the public to repay the loan and provide investment for the park, which was a common financial strategy in real estate development, but due to the economy, it was impossible. When the deal was made, nobody predicted the high interest rates, tight money market, and uncertain economic conditions that 1974 would bring. They had already sold some of their land for future development to pay the loan, but the only option left was to sell the dream park that Pat Hall had made a reality. While they were optimistic it wouldn't, the energy crisis also had an impact on attendance, but it wasn't the huge drop that some others predicted. Hall also recognized that to keep the park successful yearly, consistent investment was needed, and currently that just was not possible. For a few weeks, Carowinds had been in talks with a buyer, Family Leisure Centers, subsidiary of Taft Broadcasting, who had been prepared to make an offer that would continue investment in Carowinds and keep it operating. Taft Broadcasting would purchase Carowinds for $16 million, about $14 million less than it cost to build the park. All future expansion phases of the property were cancelled, and the sale was confirmed in January 1975, less than 2 years after opening. Taft Broadcasting already operated Kings Island in Ohio and planned to open a second park in Virginia later that year. Carowinds would be their first without an Eiffel Tower, and as soon as the sale was confirmed, original developer, creator of the idea of Carowinds, and main force behind making it happen, would announce his resignation as the president of Carowinds. He said, "I certainly have very strong feelings about this. I just hope that the Taft people will make it a better place for the people of the Carolinas." Right away, Family Leisure Centers began with a $2 million investment into the park, with the deal closing exactly 2 years after the park opened by adding the Scooby-Doo roller coaster. They said that one of the problems with the original owners of Carowinds was that they did not add enough to bring people back the second season, leading to a lower attendance. They were going to try and change that. After being forced to sell his dream, Pat Hall continued working hard in other areas of business, with even talk that he could potentially become a governor. Carowinds had been the success he envisioned. It had just come at the wrong troubled time, and he had been forced to sell it, hopefully to a company that would continue what he had started. Earl Patterson Hall passed away at the age of 57 from a heart attack in 1978, just 3 years after selling his dream park. Before he passed away, he had stated that the highlight of his career was creating Carowinds. Even if Carowinds never made any money, if he had helped make some people happy, if he had given families something they could enjoy together, then it was worth the effort. This isn't a sad story though, but one celebrating 50 years of what he created. Carowinds still operates today, after many different eras, and throughout all of those years, what he had created had made many people happy. His impact on both the states of Carolina and theme parks cannot be understated. In 2023, as Carowinds celebrates 50 years of operation, some of his opening day attractions still remain. That mine train is still running, and this year, it even features a special gold train to celebrate those 50 years. And remember everything that Pat Hall made possible on the state line of North and South Carolina.
There's no place I can't think of one. Nothing's more fun. Between the rides and the shows and the food and the games, everything's different. Nothing's the same. You find something new since the last time you came. Carowinds, nothing's more fun.
In 1975, as Carowinds entered the second of its many eras, Taft Broadcasting took over, and park attendance was lower than ever. That would change, however, when they would introduce a brand new roller coaster to the park, Thunder Road.
History, laughter, excitement, and fantasy. Carefree winds drift along with ease. Let the breeze take you where you please. Where each day's a holiday, every day is Saturday. Fun never ends. Carowinds.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. Check the link in the description to pick up your very own Expedition Carowinds t-shirt. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for updates on upcoming episodes. We will see you next time.